Good evening, and welcome to the Nobody Asked Me Guy show. Guys, I'm your host, Melvin Casey Lars, and this evening, Gene Cartwright. Now, this brother, ladies and gentlemen, has so much that he's going to be talking about and sharing with us. And please feel free, as you guys normally do, come in, ask questions, put questions in the chat box, however you're comfortable doing it. But let me just give you a little briefing here on this. When you talk about being a Pulitzer Prize nominee, when you talk about being an electrical engineer, when you talk about being an author, an entrepreneur, a man that started his own company and that had great success at that, and just a bookstore owner and all the things that he has been blessed to do, you know, it's really special. Brother Gene Cartwright has done so many things in his lifetime, and he's very humble. So, guys, we want to say to you this Tuesday evening, is that, again, this is the Nobody Asked Me Guy show. I am your host, Melvin Casey Lars, and as always, we ask you, if you will be so kind as to go to the Nobody Asked Me Guy show and subscribe to our channel. All you do is subscribe and enjoy the great content that is there. Brother Gene Cartwright, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, listen, the pleasure is certainly ours, as we mentioned in the opening, about being a Pulitzer Prize nominee. And as I mentioned to our audience, along with that, having been a business owner, having been not only the business owner, but the inventor of several things to do with your electrical engineering career and degree, and entrepreneurship and writing books and plays, and we'll talk about a list of those as we get started. But this evening, as I warned you earlier, I want to hear, and I'm sure our audience want to hear, is what is it like, to be a Pulitzer Prize nominee? So many of us have heard about various kinds of prizes, such as the Pulitzer and other prizes, and you never get an inside look at the individual. You may hear excerpts from the news media, or you may find something in a newspaper someplace. But tonight, we're blessed to have you, sir. Would you expound on that a little bit for us?
Well, first of all, again, I want to thank you for having me here today. And it's such a pleasure to reach out to your audience and to answer, as we go forward, any questions that they may have. As you alluded to, I'm somewhat reticent to begin by expounding on all of these, the list of very things that you graciously mentioned, but I will say that a couple of things come to mind immediately. One is that as I mentioned before the show began, I have been tremendously blessed. I grew up in a home with sainted parents. I was born at the right address. Had it been next door, across the street, streets over, at any other location, I likely would not be talking to you or your guests or your audience today. And so my mother and father were my first teachers. My mother taught me to read before I was 4 years old. By so doing, she gave me what I refer to as keys to the kingdom. My dad, who was a deacon in the same church for over half a century, who only had one adult job after he came to Baytown, Texas, about 20 miles from Houston, grew up in a family of 8, 4 sisters, 3 brothers, and we were all beneficiaries of a rich history passed on to us by, and I must say their name, Elmer and Marie Cartwright. Okay.
All right.
Absolutely. And to get to your immediate question about being a Pulitzer nominee, I take it as an honor, but at the same time, it's humbling because there's so many books that are published each year and so many deserving books that are out there, that both fiction and nonfiction. And this was several years ago. This is actually for my 3rd novel, initially called A Family Gathering. It was republished and renamed in her first life. Okay. This was, believe it or not, and I have to actually catch myself to think about this. This was in 2009. Really? The clock waits for no one. So it was really an humbling experience. But one of the things you learn as a writer is that you simply keep learning. You don't wait for the outcome of whatever competition there is. And I didn't wait. Of course, ultimately, it did not win the Pulitzer, but that was fine for me. It was the fact that it reached the rarefied atmosphere of actually being nominated. And it was my third novel. My first, which actually garnered more interest over the years, actually led to an Oprah invitation, was I Never Played Catch with My Father, which is a perennial seller and one that I tell people grew out of my rich background with my parents because it was based on real life story I experienced and real life I experienced growing up with my father, who was, as I had a chance to tell him, the best father ever. I told him before his passing that if I had had an opportunity to choose a father, I would have chosen him. But my dad was very devoted to his obligations as a parent, as a leader in his church, helping those in the community. We didn't share one-on-one my passion as a kid, which was baseball. I ate, slept, and drank baseball. So I'll just leave this sort of as a preface to what we may talk about later. But I would be remiss if I did not say up front, in addition to other things I've mentioned, that my recent honor in being able to deliver the message in the book by her side, Mrs. Elaine Eason Steele's amazing story of her 45-year journey at the side of Mrs. Rosa Parks. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you later how I came to be chosen or selected to write that and tell that story. And for those who you must go to byhersidebook.com. I repeat, byhersidebook.com, and learn more about her amazing story told from inside the room. Over 200 books have been written about Parks.
Yes.
None have been written with this perspective. And so it is a journey that has to be understood historically. It is about truth. It's about destroying myths. There's so many myths about her that are out there about Mrs. Parks. And that story is told, and you must take a look at that. I mean, it's just essential that you do that. Now, getting back to myself, and I'm really not getting back to because I'm so intricately involved in the telling of that story. And it was such an education for me, and one that I have to say was brought about in a way that I did not expect. Getting to the third book, which was the Pulitzer nominee, which is a book that Miss Cicely Tyson read and made sure that she got in touch with me to discuss her having read that book. And this ultimately led to being able to write by her side. It sounds a little convoluted, but that's the way the journey began. Through the efforts of her longtime assistant, friend, I can't describe Lois Ann Harris in enough ways to show just how connected she was, not only as it turns out to Mrs. Tyson, but to Mrs. Steele, Mrs. Speak, and Mrs. Parks. So sometimes, you talk about the Lord working in mysterious ways. This is one of those mysterious ways, because through that contact, I was able to be selected, was selected to tell Mrs. Steele's story. So it's really a wide and ever broadening circle involving some amazing women amazing Black women. And I'm just going to tick off a few names here. I already mentioned Mrs. Steele, Mrs. Peake, Lois Ann Harris, Ms. Rosa Parks, Ms. Cicely Tyson, my dear sweet mother. I was just doing an audit of how my life has been so blessed by being connected and coming in contact with these amazing women. So I'll take a breather in case you have a question here and talk a little bit later as we go along about writing. I almost feel guilty in addressing it as work. Although, believe me, it is work, but it's a joyous work. And one that I would do if there were no readers. I would write if there were no readers. I would still write. And that's how you measure your passion for any endeavor that you're involved in. So I'll just if you have any questions to interject, please do so. We can talk about my life, my debut at the Improv in LA, playing guitar. We could talk about that. We could talk about the fact that I had two song contract with Barry White that fell through, but there it was. I sometimes catch myself and I say, wait a minute. All this happened and I'm still breathing. I'm still enjoying this life. What's to come? But when I get to meet people like you and get to tell this story and to focus the light on these deserving, again, I talk about these amazing, not just Black women, but there are others who, men as well in my life, my father, other people I've met who have been instrumental in me being here today. But I have to tell you, there's an army of these Black women in my life that I cannot refer to often enough.
And addressing that army, I would like to ask, and I feel pretty comfortable, but I want my audience to hear it from you. When you address that audience, and when you discussed with us earlier about being 4 and learning how to read, and your mom being the first teacher, and you mentioned Miss Cicely Tyson and others, and certainly we know that there are a plethora of great women that you've been blessed to be in the company of, be in the presence of, to be, how can I say, nurtured, shaped, formed by. And you've also given men homage as well, and certainly we appreciate that. But when it comes to our young people, I would like for you, please, if you touch a little bit on, I never got to play catch with my father, and how that relates with the academician that you've become. And I almost said simply, but it's not simple at all. By being a writer, by being a Pulitzer Prize nominee, by discussing how you love writing and the people that have shaped and formed you. And one thing that caught my attention also, I should say another thing, because there are so many things that catches my attention when I read your information, because you are certainly a Renaissance man, and I don't throw that word around lightly, is the fact that you say very humbly is that I was born at the right address. And if you, again, with no sarcasm, I feel very strongly what you are saying, but if you share a little bit, because I'm blessed to have a lot of young people that watch my show along with our mature adults. I don't think some of them may quite get that, because I'm listening to you very carefully, and with us being those of melanated, however we call ourselves, Black, African American, however we call ourselves, we know about our various neighborhoods and about the challenges that are there and about the things that take place. But that as I said, that was another thing that caught my attention, and I said, wow, I'm going to have to ask Mr. Cartwright if I can steal that, when you said I was born at the right address.
Exactly. Exactly. And if I can add to my army of amazing Black women, I would be remiss and would justifiably be taken to the back shed and lashed several times if I didn't mention the incredible experience of growing up with four amazing sisters. That's where the richness of being in a home where I had an amazing mother, extended family as well, but my core family, my sisters and my brothers, are as responsible as anything for what I have become, what I will become. And but you touched on something I really want to focus on. I did not grow up I grew up in a neighborhood that was self-sufficient. We were only streets away, short distance away from Robert E. Lee High School, dare I say more. I grew up in a segregated school where we had amazing teachers who saw teaching us as their mission in life. And they gave us full measure of everything they had to see if we were educated. The blessing was that when I began first grade, I was more than just prepared, thanks to my mom. I would await the arrival of my older sister who would come home. She was 2 years older, so she was in second grade by the time I was at school. I would meet her at the front door and take her books. Now, some may argue I was just being a gentleman, helping my older sister come in with her book satchel, as they were called, in burden of books. But no, I wanted to get to her books. And those days of meeting her at our front steps and helping her get in the house by relieving the burden of carrying books were so enriching. I think she finally caught on when she had homework to do and she had to ask me what her books were. But the neighborhood, we had 2 plumbers, we had dry cleaners, we had at least 4 churches in between the 2 railroad tracks. We were only one block. I never left my street from grade 1 through grade 12. Talking about neighborhood street. I grew up on Carver Street at the left. I turned left out of my gate and went through grades 1 through 3 without losing sight of my house. Grades 4 through 12, I turned right and went a block and a half to the other grades and to George Washington Carver High School. Never lost sight of my house. I would come home in high school for lunch, to homemade lunch. I mean, my mom cooked lunch.
Wow.
It was only minutes away. I didn't know what it was like to even eat in the cafeteria.
Wow.
That was, I have to tell you, one of the most exciting things, because the high school stadium was a few blocks away, across from Robert E. Lee High School, of course. On home game nights, the entire drum and bugle corps, cheerleaders, band, everything marched right past my gate as I stood at my fence and could almost reach out and touch them. So I had a parade in front of my house. That was the kind of neighborhood I grew up in. And of course, on Sundays, you know, we were at church on Sundays.
Right. Right.
And that was the kind of neighborhood, that was just, you're talking about a close-knit neighborhood where everybody helped everyone else. It was family. We had, every adult was a parent to us. Every adult. And that was true for other kids. But one of the things I want to talk about with respect to learning and the thirst for knowledge for young people, you are determining the life you will have far into the future. You, no matter what the others are doing in your neighborhood, sometimes there's this desire to want to do what your peers are doing, because there's a very narrow view of what their life is. It's just contained within my friends are here. I go here on this day and that day and that day. But the thing about it, you have to try as best you can to look deep into the future, even if it's just a few weeks, few months, few years. But the fact is that I often was criticized for, quote unquote, being too smart, for speaking what they call the King's English. But I pointed out to them, and I'm going to be blunt here, there's some white folks who never opened an English book. You just listen to, we had a president who could hardly speak English. So it is a disservice when for Black kids to be told, you sound like them, or no, you sound like you know something. And the whole thing about just being who you are, understanding that those criticisms that you received at certain points early in your life fade as time goes by. I'll give you one classic example. There was a young guy I had a fight with on the first day of school, first grade. Yes. His name was Charles. I'll leave his last name out, even though he's deceased, to protect the guilty.
I understand.
Yes, we had a fight. And we had a principal at that elementary school who didn't care who started a fight. And she brought us both in and interested what she called the Board of Education, which was made of real wood. And so years and years later, even into my adulthood, I happened to be passing by Charles's parents' home, and he happened to be there. He saw me walking by. He said, "Cartwright, you got a minute?" I said, "Hey, what's going on, Charles?" I came over to where he was, and he said, "Listen, I just have to tell you something." He said, "I'm sure you haven't forgotten our first day of school all those years ago." I said, "No." He said, "But all the years that have passed, I've admired you. You've treated me and everybody else the same, whether we were in your class or grade level or whatever. You never treated any of us differently." He says, "And I have to tell you, I respect that." Now, I could properly classify Charles as, how can I say, maybe a little on the front side, but he was a friend who did not have to measure up to any particular predisposition or any kind of notion I had of what a friend was like. And I just was grateful to him for expressing something that he wanted to say and talk about all those years. So I say to young people, be who you are. Ask yourself, what kind of person do you want to be, not just now, but beyond where you're in the throes of influence from others, or perhaps not having the kind of home environment that's conducive to learning. You have the ultimate responsibility. And this will become clear as you go through your life, and make no exceptions in your life for those who may be at different levels. Judge people, you learn to judge people for who they are, not what they have or what they may have. And, but no, I will just add this as well. During some of my book tours in the past, one of the things I've always said yes to was invitation to come and spend time in classrooms with young people at every level. And it's just amazing when you give them an opportunity to freely express themselves without risking condemnation. And it's something I practice even with my youngest son. My youngest son taught me how to do this. Having a time to get together and give them the opportunity to say whatever you wanted without fear or risk of being criticized, condemned, corrected, or anything. Just to freely, once a week, that's it. This is your opportunity to say whatever you want, to talk about whatever you want, raise whatever subject you want. I would take him on book tours with me. Of course, I don't have to get for you to hook you to do that, but I think he benefited from that. So I could go on, and I'm trying not to stray off in too many various directions, but I want to say that being born at 1113 Carver Street was my blessing. I mean, because my mom and dad, my father, who never, I think he only attended to the 9th grade. My mother graduated high school, but my dad didn't. My dad helped raise his siblings at the age of 16 on, because he lost his father from a car accident. And he and his mother were there with 8 other siblings. So the principles are rich. I mean, it was just an amazing life to have lived. And I know so many kids in my neighborhood who did not have that sort of wealth. So I was born rich.
Brother Cartwright, please know that you have thumbs and hearts going up all over the place. I just have to share that with you. And you know, as you share that, and as you share that with such clarity, you mentioned the fact about how much you love baseball, and you even wrote a book about that. However, you are talking about, again, being an academician and your expertise. And as we all know, the stigma and having been a football player, you know, the stigma has always been that if you're interested in athletics, then it's virtually impossible to be interested in academics. Well, we of course know that's not true. And people talk about all brawn and no brain, etc. And on a personal note, I love to hear brothers, men in general, but I'll be very honest. I love to hear brothers talk about their love for academics and obviously writing, and I'm a writer myself, etc. So I'm going to ask again, for not only for the young people, but for the elders, because some of us are hungry. You know what? I'm going to backtrack a second, if you will allow me. Just today, there was a young man that I was his assistant principal when he was in middle school, and he sent out a question over Facebook inquiring as to whether he should introduce his son Deuce to football. Now, Deuce is only a sixth grader. And of course, I shared with him my opinion, but I was disappointed because, and then that's why I'm asking what I'm going to ask you. I was disappointed at how many people, the adults, the young adults, the middle-aged adults, etc., jumped on the bandwagon of, oh yeah, let him play this, that, and the third. No one, Brother Cartwright, took time to share with the fact, hey, he's only sixth grade, you know, give him time to grow up, let him grow some other interests, teach him who he is, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm serious. I was very disappointed in that, because I just feel that we place so much emphasis, and I love sports, by the way. Sure. But we in our minds is that we drank the Kool-Aid, because just from those statements that were there, you could tell from the connotations, even though they weren't saying it, is that this is the only way. And the gentleman, Ryan, is an entrepreneur, by the way. He's a businessman, owns several businesses. But the mindset still, well, even though it's your son, and the only way he's going to be able to succeed is probably be great at football, etc. Can you talk about that a little bit with the love of baseball and the book that you've already penned, and the academics and how they are married?
Well, you know, so often, and this isn't, and I try not to make a broad assessment, but to let it fall where it may. Too often, parents in various pursuits try to vicariously live their lives with their children. If you step back and you ask if a particular parent is trying to direct the child at a very early age, where they're still forming their own concepts of what their life is like and looking around at examples, sometimes you find that the parent perhaps even achieve a level of success in a particular area they want. You think that in some sense gives to the children an opportunity to continue that vicariously and to see their child as own. It sells a child short, I think, when you try to narrow the opportunities in saying you're only going to be successful, or you're only going to reach the height of success that one may aspire to if you pursue athletics. And the truth is, and the truth that's not often told, very few in the total numbers of potential athletes reach that kind of level, exit their particular sport whole, both physically, emotionally. And if you look at the total span, for example, of professionals in either sport over a certain number of years, what is the maximum number of years that a particular athlete can look forward to playing compared to a lifelong career in other pursuits that may ultimately yield even greater success. But I should point out there are ex-football players who are noted surgeons, who are in the sciences, who have achieved great success in fields no one would believe was available to them because they may have played sports for a particular period of time. I mean, they're there. And I just wish that some of them would be more vocal and more upfront in terms of making this point very clear. So the thing is to provide pathways and opportunities to your child, and you will follow their lead rather than pushing them down a narrow path where they ultimately may grow to resent your having done so at some point in the future. But you want to make sure that they understand, listen, the world is available to them. Pathways that they perhaps wouldn't otherwise not think about are available to them. So, but if they're gifted, talented, or have talents that can be further developed in a particular area, and if that is their true desire, the child's true desire to move in that direction, of course you want to encourage, but not to force them, not to push them, not to try to live your life through them and sort of being able to share in their success, whether it be for just bragging rights or for financial benefit. And it's just that this stereotype has existed for so long. The assumption that is made, you walk through an airport facility and you see a young Black kid who's tall and you assume that he's a basketball player, or he can be, or will be, or she.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
I've been in the presence of some kids like that. I said, so what field of engineering are you aspiring to? Or what medical field? Or what area? I make sure they understand I'm not looking at them and thinking automatically, oh yeah, you're limited. You're only going to play basketball potentially. Or kid may desire to do both, or all. You just make sure that no avenue is foreclosed. And that has to be drilled in early on because kids are quick to pick up on what their parents are ultimately desiring, even if they don't vocalize it, even if they don't say it to them. They listen. They get things when you don't know they're listening.
Absolutely.
On your reactions, your facial expressions, the things you say to your adult friends that think they don't know about, they don't hear. They hear. So it's just that the avenue is completely open. And at this point, I also want to mention, for those interested in learning more about my 16 books at this stage, and I got more coming, hopefully, GeneCartwrightBooks.com. And I invite kids of every age, from 1 to 100, and even beyond that, if you are there, to drop me a note, to ask questions that may not come to you during the course of this interview, to reach out. Some of my most pleasurable book signings have been what happens after the book event is over. I've spent sometimes more time talking to people about their lives and about things and about their own dreams that they feel they can't pursue. I've had people say, I always want to write a book, but I say, listen, write. Nothing is written, everything is rewritten. Editing is something I truly enjoy editing. Most writers won't tell you, but I love editing. I love going back through my books. See, when I read the first draft, at the end of the first draft, I say, okay, let's write. Okay, time to write. Because I've just laid out the blueprint. Case in point, when I wrote what was original Family Gathering, it was 350 plus pages. And I create a dossier on every character, even if I don't use all aspects of their personality that I create. So that if I met them coming down the street, I say, oh yeah, I know who you are. Because I created such a involved dossier on them. But when I got to 354 pages in this particular book, and I thought I was done, my character spoke to me. One in particular. Well, if I can say this without people calling for the ambulances to take me away in the white jacket, they came to me, one male character, this brother in this story, who was one of 4 siblings. He was the sole male in the family, other than the father. And he said, Gene, listen, we had a meeting. You're not done. He says, where is Sister Florinda Baptiste? Where is this? And he mentioned characters I had not been. I'm listening. The book ultimately came out to be 512 pages instead of 354. When you write and you just tell the story without trying to edit as you write, that's the mistake a lot of beginning writers do. They try to edit as they write. They want the first page to be perfect, and they want to go back and review the second and the third and on and on. No, you start with creativity when you do. Let it just pour out. It's almost like taking a 10,000 piece puzzle set. You don't dump it out on the table and says, behold, it is finished. You see the picture on the book, on the cover, you know, that's ultimately what I want to get to.
Right.
So it is writing. Dump it out there and you start to edit, which is what putting pieces together is involved. And even when you get to a point where you think you're done, allow yourself some time and space to say, okay, let me listen to the characters. Let them talk to me. Step back for a while. Go fishing.
Well, listen, man. I know I've kept you too long already, but I have to ask this. Since we're talking about writing and you're giving us all of this rich information, I know that you have 2 pieces that you've done screenwriting on.
Well, about 10 altogether.
About 10, okay. And I would like, there's a young lady that's joined us here. Her name is Miss Maple Suds. Miss Suds has a fantastic book called No Blood in the Turnip, Memoirs of a Codependent.
Oh,
And
man, I love that title.
You love the title, and so do I. And I think it's a fantastic book. And I would like Miss Suds, if you're not, she's kind of bashful now, Mr. Cartwright. But I would like Miss Suds to ask you about, if you would think a book with that title and the information would be worthy of a screenwriting, would be worthy of some kind of play, that kind of thing. I want her, and I'm glad she's here. Miss Suds, are you still here? But she has a book called No Blood Left in the Turnip, Memoirs of a Codependent. And I'll just, if I can, let's give you a little pitch. The book is about her life, her son's life, her husband's life, and she talks about, she was a staunch Christian woman, and how she thought she was going to change the husband, and the husband changed her, and and the sons, unfortunately, I guess, well, I'm trying to be gentle with this, but the sons were kind of a disappointment, etc. And I encouraged her to come on tonight and to listen to you because of the Renaissance person that you are. And I will ask you, if you don't mind, if when it talk about screenwriting and that type of stuff, because you've talked so much about writing in general, man, and I mean, I'm getting a wealth of information from you in our audience. Can you talk to us a little bit about screenwriting and things of that nature?
I'll be happy to. One of the things I have learned with respect to the art of screenwriting, and it is an art that you develop. One of the best things you can do is read some screenplays. Not just any screenplays. Read Academy Award nominated screenplays that are available for immediate download right now on the web. You want to start with those winning screenplays. Now, what you have to also understand, when you get to the level of being nominated for a screenplay and you have reached that level of screenwriting, I'm reminded of something my art teacher told me when I was in fourth grade. He says, there are tricks to every trade, but learn the trade before the tricks. Because you can find some screenplays that are Academy Award nominated and winning who violate some of the strict aspects that are set aside for screenwriting. I can provide, and I will do so later on my website, genecartwrightbooks.com, some links to materials that can be read, studied. It's about educating oneself about the writing screenplays are very particular technique. I mean, you can have a great story, and if you've got a producer, somebody looking at your screenplay, and you violate even margin restrictions, placement, font size. If it comes, you're writing in a font that's not acceptable. I don't care how well the story is told; it never gets past the first page. So knowing the technical aspects of it, but more importantly, begin by writing a synopsis, an overview of the story. Develop what I call an elevator pitch. What is the log line? The log line means that little blurb that says what the story is about without giving away the entire story. But education, like in everything, is the key. Study. There are many free screenwriting guides. Some will say one thing, some will say the other, but there's some, for example, there's some websites that have very dependable, very reliable resource information on learning how to write. So rather than giving you, point 1, point 2, point 2, point 3, I would say study without being impatient. Read screenplays, as many as you can. Download screenplays from the AFI 100, the American Film Institute 100 top screenplays. Any Academy Award, as I mentioned earlier, screenplays you can download and read. In addition to having the specifications, the specs are so critical in format properly. But this is when you get to a point where you actually start to write. But the most important thing is to, if you're a movie buff and you watch movies that are in the genre you want to write, you want to first watch those. Even if you have to watch them repeatedly, even if you have to read screenplays, a select number, repeatedly that are in the genre you want to write in. But the most important thing is to write. Don't get rid of this, well, this will never sell, this will never this or that. No. You are the first buyer of your story. Okay. You're the first viewer of your story. You have to see it yourself and believe in it yourself, even through rejections. Alex Haley's book, you know how many times it was rejected? Roots? 500.
500?
Alex Haley's book was rejected 500 times.
Wow.
It's a badge of honor. Okay.
Wow.
I was fortunate with my first book to be in what almost never happens. I was in a 5 major publisher auction, including Simon Schuster, Alfred Knopf, St. Martin's Press, and 2 divisions of Random House.
Mm-hmm.
It never happens, but the thing about it, don't look for immediate success. Look for continued learning as you advance up the ladder in terms of knowing what's expected from anyone else who's going to be reading your screenplay. Get the mechanics down.
Mm-hmm.
Develop your story Write, if you have, you want to say what your screenplay is about, give me a one-page synopsis.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to tell me how it ends, but I have to see the progression from how it begins. And every good screenplay is a three act play. Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. There's the beginning, a middle, and an end. So I mean, there's seminars on screenplay writing, and you may find yourself paying a little money to go attend one. There are screenwriting workshops where you get to talk to people who have the same aspirations and desires as you. I can tell you some very successful movies that sat on desks in a producer's office for up to 10 years, and all of a sudden they open the store. Oh, what is this? So, oh, let me read this. And it's been on his desk or her desk for years, because the competition is just that fierce. But don't let that dissuade you. You're the first, as I say, first reader. You're the first buyer. You're the first producer. Have that approach, in that if you believe in a story, tune out the negative, focus on the positive, and write. But read some screenplays. I'll end on that. Read screenplays.
Well, listen. I keep apologizing for
No
keeping you
apologies.
so long. I hadn't planned on it, but it's so, there's so much rich information. Until if we talk until this time tomorrow, we still would not have all of the information. And it's just a pleasure to have you, sir. Again, if you will, please, if you excuse me, have anything that you'd like to leave us with, if you would please share that at this time.
Yes. Well, a couple of things, and of course, I close with my pitch. But before I get to that, I just simply want to say, don't sell yourself short. If there's only one cheerleader on your sideline, you have to be it, even if you also have to run the plays. Okay. You must. I wish I had in front of me one of my poems I would read. I don't know if we have time, but I'll post it. I'll just tell you, go to my website. I have a poem on my website called "How Long Are You Gonna Be There?"
Okay.
How long it's in my book of poetry, which is called Still Dreaming. But what it is, it's an up or not a down. What it says to you is that if you're drawing breath, if you're making steps, if you're still walking upright and eating with a fork, or even if you're a paraplegic, quadriplegic, and drinking through a straw, your dreams can be achieved. You just have to find whatever avenue you must take to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Don't let anyone, even those people closest to you, discourage you. And don't let age be a deterrent. You say, well, I've been too long now. I can't do it. What do you mean you can't? You can. Do not accept can't.
Right.
Okay? You're the engine that starts your machine.
Right.
And I would just simply invite people to contact me through GeneCartwrightBooks.com. And please visit buyhersidebook.com to read this amazing story of this amazing person. This is Elaine Easton Steele, who was by the side of Rosa Parks for 45 years. There's some people out there who have the ear of a lot of people who have a lot of facts wrong about Mrs. Parks.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to not only inspire, but to educate. And that's what we try to do in the book. So reach out to me at GeneCartwrightBooks.com, drop me a note, ask me a question, whatever you'd like to do. And I'll be happy to respond to you.
Fantastic. Well, Mr. Gene Cartwright, it certainly has been a pleasure having you here, sir. We've received so much knowledge, so much enthusiasm. And it's great hearing you share what you share, because we know all the myths that are out there when it talks about age, when it talks about where a person grew up and parents' education, all of those things. And none of those things address Gene Cartwright, to be quite frank. And again, that's what all of us need to hear as globally as human beings, not just people of color, but of human beings. So it's been a blessing. Dare I say that? It's been a blessing to have had you on as our premier guest on the Nobody Asked Me Guy show. Hopefully we can share more. I would love to have you return as a guest to expound on more things. I know you said you have more books coming out, and we can talk about those books.
I tell you, I'm the woman, Ella McCall Hagan. Yes, Ella McCall Hagan. You remember that name? I bet she's going to be on one of your future shows. And I invite everybody to make sure they tune in to listen to her.
Fantastic. As a matter of fact, Ella will be with us next week. Yes,
Fantastic.
Ella will be with
us. Listening. I'll be checking it out.
Well, thank you very much. Well, listen, this has been the Nobody Asked Me Guy show. I am your host and executive producer, Melvin Casey Lars. And please send us all comments to the Nobody Asked Me Guy show at gmail.com. And again, if you'll join us next Tuesday at 6 p.m. Central time for Miss Ella Hagan. And she'll be talking with us, also expounding on her life experiences and things that she's done. So guys, listen, Mr. Cartwright, again, it's been great having you, sir. And we appreciate you being here. This has been the Nobody Asked Me Guy show. We want everyone to have a great and blessed evening.